about 1.5 years back with Odoo, and that's when we had our first client, and we became a partner. I got in touch with Lalit, and that's how it started. I'll just give you a brief introduction about the client. So it was a retail-based dry fruit company. It was a third generation business running in the very traditional, the most traditional way possible. Uh, it was one of the top five companies in India in dry fruit, and they were in a rapid expansion mode. When we joined or when we started, they were at 20 stores, and they had the vision of going to 500 stores in 2 years, and they've completed 200 stores in less than a year. So that is the type of expansion they were looking at. And the biggest reason why they wanted a software was to ensure that this scaling is possible. And they had manual operations, a lot of issues, proprietary software not able to handle the scale at which they were wanting to grow. So that is where we came in. We came in as their financial implementers. We explored multiple softwares before deciding whether it should be Odoo. And after going through multiple softwares, taking multiple demos, we realized Odoo is probably one of the best software. That's how we started. I'll just take you through the challenges that they had. So with 20 stores selling across 10 online platforms, manual billing, very tedious accounting process, that was one of the biggest challenges. Uh, Having inventory blind spot, I think anybody in retail understands that this is a very big concern. What happens to the inventory? Where does the inventory go? Can I track it? Very big concern again. Decentralized data. They were present in multiple states, but which state is giving what revenue was very difficult to monitor at a company level. At an HO level, they didn't have clarity, or not at least real time, probably very late or at the time of filing. Communication breakdown. I think the stores and the HO didn't communicate very properly. The requisitions were manual, WhatsApp. So whatever was needed was sent on WhatsApp. Then the demand was fulfilled again on WhatsApp. I think that's not scalable. For 200 stores, 500 stores, it's a mess. And multi-company management. Now, being in 12 states, they needed to have 12 separate accounting databases or accounting companies. In proprietary software, you need to have one data for each company because the GST is different. Imagine handling 12 datas is just chaotic. And then intercompany again, then consolidation, a lot of challenges. Based on these challenges, because we were of a CA background, it was very easy for us to understand and give them solutions more from a finance friendly option. So that is where our expertise came in. We decided the project scope majorly based on the challenges. All of that we discussed was covered in the scope. Handling accounting properly, ensuring that the inventory management is there. They start using a warehouse solution. There is a POS solution that starts getting to used at these stores. Also, there was a problem at the store. I will tell you when we go ahead. So these were not your typical stores. These were a store in store. Anybody has any idea what a store in store is? Uh, Not quite there. So a store in store is a store that is actually already in a store. So imagine a Reliance Smart where they have their own store. The main master store is owned by Reliance. The POS would be of Reliance. But you get a counter or you get a space that you have to operate or manage. So a store in store is even more difficult because you don't get to do the billing. You don't have access to their system. So you have to build in your own system and ensure it's robust so you can manage it properly. So POS was very critical or very important at this scope. Multi-company management, trying to ensure all the companies are being managed at one click. So that was also under one of the scope. Communication, as I mentioned, that if there was a way in which stores could communicate to the HO of what they need, HO could communicate to the store of what is needed by the HO, I think that would make it a little more easier. Give them more central dashboard. Also, we wanted to define users because the company currently has about 400 employees. Not everybody can be given all sort of accesses, especially in POS. So all of those role-based accesses, the project scope was decided. And again, the consolidation of all these 12 states and the companies that we are handling. So that was the scope. I think, as I mentioned, after multiple software demos, Odoo was probably one of the best solutions that we found. It is an ecosystem that it caters to all the problems that we had. And I think not just we, I think in any retail, any company, any problem that they have, Odoo has a solution. So we had single source. The data flow was very smooth from one module to other. So my inventory, warehouse, manufacturing, POS, accounting, all of these modules started talking to each other, which is a very big boon, at least in the retail business. Enhanced store operations going to 200 scale was possible only because we had Odoo in system. If we had to manually do this, I think the system would have, the proprietary software definitely would have collapsed. So I think it was only possible because of Odoo. We created a lot of automated reconciliation. Now, I'm not sure if all of you understand about the pains of GST reconciliation, but GSTR 2B reconciliation is a very big problem, and it's a problem that you understand 3 years later when the officer comes knocking. So while you're doing it, you feel you're doing everything right. But when the officer comes in, that's when you realize, oh, that's a problem, and the time has passed. So we did a lot of reconciliations for them to ensure all the reconciliations are being done at the right time, at the time of filing, and not after as a post check. The HO got a lot of empowerment. They could take a lot of decisions because they had data. And there was a very simplified financial view of GST, consolidated books. At one click, I could know the revenue of all the SKUs of all the stores, dissected it any way possible. So that definitely helped. What was the impact of these solutions? So I understand that there is a problem, we solved the problem, but there has to be some business impact also to it, right? Their stock reduction went, mismatch went down by 90%. So earlier they had a very huge gap. The first time when we did stock audit and we checked the system audit, sorry, when we checked the physical stock and the stock in the system, there was a huge gap. That gap came down by 90% only because we started monitoring. That was the biggest impact. And in retail, inventory is your cash, next to cash. So, especially in dry fruit, where it's a high traded, highly revenue traded commodity and an expensive one, this becomes the biggest asset that a company can have. So, this mismatch being controlled, I think, was one of the biggest impact that they had. We had, sorry, we had three accountants when we started at 20 stores, and even after 200 stores, the number of accountants still remained the same. This is only possible if your systems were automated, if there is that efficiency in the system that they can manage, and manual intervention is reduced. So, while doing the solution, we also ensured that most of the solutions eliminated manual operations and most of it was automated. So then it makes more sense that there is a cost saving also in all of this. You don't need heavy accountants. Otherwise, with every 10, 15 stores, you would need an accountant to manage the accounting, manage GST, manage billing. But because of Odoo, we could restrict at three accountant. I think that was a very big impact that they had. They got real-time visibility of these 200 stores. So as I mentioned today, I can tell you what is the revenue for almond, for cashew, for pista at each of these stores, SKU level, margin level. Any way you want to look at the data, we can dissect it because we have the POS solution. And all at a click, all at a dashboard, using spreadsheet, all of it through Odoo. So that's a very big impact that created. While we did this, we realized a lot of SKUs were being sold at a loss or at a very less margin, which is a very big concern in retail because most people don't realize it, because when the prices change, our revenues don't change accordingly, but the cost keeps going up. And in a business where there are more than 1,000 SKUs, it is very common to miss price upgradation in few of them. So the moment we had these critical data, we could correct, course and correct the data and realize that now we can get more profit because we corrected the price. And robust internal control, I think this also has some merit because of our background, because we have that auditor brain in general. We ensure that if, before we set a process, we answer the question, what will auditor ask, and we set up the entire process accordingly. Because we know once the implementation is done, The biggest pain point is going to be when the auditor comes in, it'll ask you question ki, what is this, what is that, how did you do it? That's when our advantage comes in play, that we set it up prior only. So we know what an auditor is going to ask. We'll set up, and I think that was again a very big business impact. We've completed our audit as on 31st July. This is a company that has done audits almost on the last day, but because it was everything on Odoo, they could manage to finish the entire audit 4 5 months before the due date, because everything was automated. We could explain them, and we had created a lot of user manuals which we could give to the auditors also. So it made the entire process very easy. What are the learnings from? So once there is such a big problem and you've given a solution, there has to be a lot of key takeaways that you have to remember. In our case, we realized that digital transformation is the only way you can scale. If you want to scale, you have to use digital transformation, AI. You have to go hand in hand with tech. If you're trying or shying away from tech, then it's not going to work. Same as I think for AI as well. We can't not embrace the technology. You have to work with it and try to grow. So that's the biggest takeaway that we had. Standard. So we are actually not your typical technical partners. We don't have a lot of development knowledge, but still we could successfully implement such a big company, at such a big scale, only because a lot of standard features of Odoo are very powerful. People directly try to get into customizations, but I think most cases may you can manage the entire operation through the standard features only. There is a studio option available which we have mastered, and I think that's good enough. You don't need to develop something unless really needed. So instead of trying to get about just into developments directly, you can try to use studio, and I think most of the standard features were very good for us, and we could manage almost everything. I think 5% we would have developed, but most of it we could manage with standard Odoo features. So that's definitely a very big plus. Right partner is very crucial. So if you have implementation planned around inventory module, then you need a finance based partner. If you have something from a CRM or a website point of view, then you need a tech based partner. Deciding whom do you need for what type of implementation is again very critical. In their case, it worked because their entire implementation, I can say accounting was the backbone. They wanted all modules to be set, keeping accounting in center. So that's where that became the biggest advantage, that we were their partners, because we understand finance, we understand numbers. It was very easy for us to structure the entire implementation. And just a last part of why Finable Consulting. I think in 1 year we have had about 300 users. We are one of the nominated partners for best partner as a starter in India in less than a year. So that definitely speaks about our delivery, about our success. So any accounting related implementation, we are your go to partners, we are the expert. And that I think is a very big takeaway, that whenever you decide a problem, your solution has to be somebody who's an expert at that problem and not a generalist. So our category particularly is very niche. So even in the stalls, I think most of the partners are technical with superb technical knowledge. We are probably the only ones with very less technical knowledge, but we have superb knowledge in our domain, that is finance. And we are very proud that we can help you in any financial related expertise, because we understand numbers and we understand what is needed from a compliance point of view, especially what is needed by the governments, and that is very critical. You may not realize the importance of it now, but when an audit or when a scrutiny happens, all of these things are very critical and crucial. So I think that's about it. I'm open for Q&A if there's any Q&A. Any doubts, anything that you would like to check? Yes. Sorry, you're not audible. You'll have to be a little louder.
Hello, hello. Am I audible? Yeah. So I have question. As you have mentioned, your client is from retail sector, so they have dry fruits in their products. So if you talk about dry fruits and only of cashew, there are multiple products we can make from cashew. So how complicate is to manage the inventory part here? Like if we talk only about one product cashew and it have multiple sub product, we can make multiple products from it. So how difficult it will be to manage all those things in inventory field?
So your name?
My name is Nikhil, sir.
So Nikhil, that's a very good question. I think in retail, understanding the inventory is very, very important. Sorry. Like you mentioned in dry fruit, just in cashew, there were multiple types. In fact, I didn't know that there is a cashew 180, cashew 320, cashew 240, and that's how they call cashews. It's only when we understood the business we realized. But we actually gave a considerable amount of time in naming the inventory. So to answer your question, managing inventory is not tough if you give good efforts in setting up the process. We gave all the inventory a separate name, nothing related to business. So we didn't call it cashew 240 because we knew it was bound to create confusion. Everybody would add in their values. We gave it a random name, and then we tried to set a culture where everybody called it with that name only. So all our POs, all our sale orders, everything, the requisition, all of it was raised by that number only. To give you an example, cashew 240 was say called Y500, and that's how we decided that we'll name all the stock. And once we named it, I think managing inventory was not tough. So we created barcodes of Y500, and then once the barcoding is done, warehousing also becomes simpler. So to manage an inventory where there is 1,000 plus SKUs, naming them and identifying them right at the inception, I think is the best way to go about it. So you got the answer, right? Anybody else for any questions?
How to manage the tax?
So taxes, GST, TDS is already there.
I'm not
And
asking about India. It's like a globally. You just have a UA, UK, US. Is a different type of tax
so I
structures.
think Odoo has taxation for all countries, and
Okay.
they have different partners and different account managers at all countries. So we recently did an implementation for a Dubai-based company,
Yeah.
wherein Lalit connected us to one of the implementation partners in that country. So compliances kind of, if you realize, remain the same. In fact, India is the most complex.
Yes, yes, yes.
So if you
Because
do India, I think any other country that way is very easy. And accounting rules also more or less remain the same. So because we could manage India, doing outside India was not tough. We
yes,
definitely needed help. And that's where I think Lalit came in as a savior. He connected us to one of the partners there where we could work together. Since the client was ours, we did the initial setup. And only on the taxation part to understand the rules, we took their help and we kind of set it up. So it's not that tough again. And taxes are very simplified. If you've done in India
this
with
is very
100
difficult.
GST rates, with zero, nil, and tax free being three different categories,
Every 6 months are changes. The taxpayers it's like GST tax. Because I
I
am a
can
founder, I just have challenges about
I can
this.
only sympathize with you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Yeah, my name myself Surya.
Yes.
So you have
Your name is
implemented
Sunil.
Surya.
Surya.
Yeah, you have implemented the 200 stores, right? Like you did only finance, or else you help them in automating with partnership with Odoo.
We did all modules that affected finance. So
Okay.
POS, if you realized, is not particularly a finance module, but because billing has to be done,
Yes.
it has an impact on my books of accounts. So all modules. So we did some spreadsheet for them. We did some survey for them. So it's not just accounting. We did automate their process of how to raise a requisition was also automated. So we
Okay.
used a survey form to automate that part. So
Okay.
anything that affected accounts or is linked to accounts was done. Anybody else? So I think I finished in time. So you guys have been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much. And if there's anything, you can take my card once I'm down, or we can connect. Finable is the company's name. And I'm Manish Periwal. You can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much.